away like trash. No warning, no final argument, just his hand on my shoulder blade, shoving hard enough that I stumbled, my swollen belly throwing off my balance. The door slammed before I could turn around, before I could beg, before I could even scream. The lock clicked. That sound, small, metallic, final. That was the sound of my life ending. I stood there in the dim corridor of our apartment building, one hand braced against the wall, the other cradling my stomach where the baby kicked, oblivious to the fact that we'd just become homeless. The carpet beneath my feet was stained and threadbare. I was wearing slippers, no coat. It was November in Chicago, and I was wearing slippers and a thin sweater, and I had nowhere to go. My phone was inside. My wallet was inside. Everything I owned was inside that apartment, behind that locked door. And Wade was in there too, probably already on the phone with her. The woman he'd been seeing for 3 months. The woman whose perfume I'd smelled on his collar and convinced myself I was imagining because I was pregnant and hormonal and paranoid. I wasn't paranoid. I was just stupid. I knocked. My knuckles were shaking. Wade, Wade, please. Just let me get my things. Nothing. Wade, I'm pregnant. You can't, you can't just. The baby kicked again, harder this time, and I felt something twist low in my abdomen. Not pain exactly, just pressure. A warning. I knocked harder. I need my phone. I need my. Please, please, just open the door. A door opened, but not Wade's. Mrs. Chen from 3B poked her head out, her face creased with concern, and something else. Pity. She looked at my belly, at my slippers, at the way I was shaking. Then she looked away and closed her door. Nobody wanted to get involved. I was alone. The hallway seemed to stretch in both directions, endless and empty, and I realized I was crying. When had I started crying? My face was wet. My hands were wet. Everything was wet, and I couldn't stop shaking, and the baby wouldn't stop kicking, and I needed to think, but my brain felt like static. I had no money, no phone, no family. My mother died when I was 19, and my father pretended I didn't exist after I dropped out of college to be with Wade. Wade, who promised me everything would be okay. Wade, who said we'd figure it out together. Wade, who just locked me out like I was nothing. Like we were nothing. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on that stained carpet, my back against the peeling paint, my hand on my belly. The baby moved beneath my palm, a small flutter, and I whispered, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know who I was apologizing to. The baby. Myself. God, maybe if he was listening. He wasn't. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the hallway lights to flicker. Long enough for my legs to go numb. Long enough for the pressure in my abdomen to sharpen into something that made me catch my breath. Not contractions. Not yet. But close enough to terrify me. I needed to move. I needed to find somewhere warm, somewhere safe, somewhere I could think. The building's lobby had a bench. That was something. I could sit there until morning, until I figured out what to do, until I could borrow someone's phone and call. Who? I had no one. The realization settled over me like ice water. I had burned every bridge for Wade, cut off every friend who warned me about him, isolated myself because he said they didn't understand us, didn't understand our love, didn't want us to be happy. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking, and made my way to the stairwell. The elevator was broken, had been for weeks, and I had lived, on the third floor. Going down felt like descending into hell. Each step jarred my spine, sent little shocks of pain through my pelvis. The baby was so low now, so heavy. Just a little further, I whispered. To the baby. To myself. The lobby was colder than the hallway. The glass doors at the front of the building let in the November wind, and I could see rain streaking the windows, turning the streetlights outside into blurred halos of yellow light. The bench Mrs. Rodriguez usually sat on during the day was empty. I lowered myself onto it, the vinyl cracking beneath my weight, and tried to think. Tomorrow. I would figure everything out tomorrow. Tonight, I just needed to survive. But surviving meant staying warm, and the lobby wasn't warm. It was barely warmer than outside. I could see my breath misting in front of my face. My teeth started to chatter. I wrapped my arms around myself and tried to think through the fog in my brain. There was a shelter on Madison Street. I'd passed it before, seen the line of people waiting outside. But that was at least 2 miles away, and I was in slippers, and it was raining, and the pressure in my abdomen was getting worse. Maybe I could ask someone for help. Wait until someone came. Home, explain my situation, ask to use their phone. But it was past midnight now, and this wasn't the kind of building where people came home late. It was the kind of building where people worked double shifts and collapsed into bed and didn't want to hear about anyone else's problems. I closed my eyes and tried to remember what Wade's face looked like when he shoved me. Had he looked angry? Guilty? Relieved? I couldn't remember. I could only remember the feeling of his hand on my back, the momentum carrying me forward, the door slamming, the sound of the lock. A car pulled up outside, headlights cutting through the rain. I watched through the streaked glass as two men got out. They were wearing dark coats, expensive looking, and they moved with the kind of purpose that made my stomach clench. They weren't residents. I knew all the residents. The taller one looked up at the building, scanning the windows, and I saw his face in the streetlight. Sharp features, cold eyes. He said something to the other man, who nodded and pulled out a phone. Every instinct I had screamed danger. I didn't know why. I didn't know who they were or what they wanted. But I knew, the way prey knows when a predator is near, that I needed to hide. I stood up too fast, and the world tilted. Black spots danced at the edges of my vision. The baby kicked, hard, and the pressure in my abdomen spiked into actual pain, sharp enough to make me gasp. Not now. Please, not now. I stumbled toward the back of the lobby, where a service door led to the alley behind the building. It was supposed to be locked, but the superintendent never fixed it, and right now I was grateful for his negligence. I pushed through it into the rain. The cold hit me like a physical blow. The rain was icy, almost sleet, and within seconds I was soaked through. My sweater clung to my skin. My slippers squelched in the puddles. But I kept moving, one hand on the brick wall for balance, the other on my belly. Behind me, I heard the lobby door open. Voices. The men had gone inside. I didn't look back. The alley was narrow and dark, lined with dumpsters and fire escapes. It smelled like rot and exhaust. I moved as quickly as I could, my breath coming in short gasps, rain streaming into my eyes. At the end of the alley, I could see the street, cars passing, light and noise and people. Safety. I was almost there when I heard footsteps behind me. Running. Hey! The voice was sharp, commanding, male. I ran. I didn't think about the baby, or the pain, or the fact that I was 7 months pregnant, and running was probably the worst thing I could do. I just ran, my slippers sliding on the wet pavement, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. I reached the street and turned left, away from the apartment building, into the maze of side streets and alleys that made up this part of the city. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. The footsteps stayed behind. Me, getting closer. Stop running! I didn't stop. I turned down another alley, this one darker, narrower. A dead end, I realized too late. A chain link fence blocked the far end, too high to climb even if I wasn't pregnant. I spun around just as the man caught up to me. He was younger than I'd thought, maybe 30, with dark hair plastered to his forehead from the rain. His coat was open, and I could see a gun holstered at his hip. My blood turned to ice. Vesper, he said, and the fact that he knew my name made everything worse. We're not going to hurt you, we just need to talk. I pressed my back against the fence, my hands instinctively covering my belly. I don't know you. I don't know what you want. Your boyfriend owes some people money, a lot of money. His voice was calm, reasonable, like we were discussing the weather. We need to know where he is. Wade. Of course it was Wade. Wade and his gambling problem that he swore he'd quit. Wade and his promises that everything was under control. I don't know, I said, and my voice cracked. I don't know where he is. He. He kicked me out. I don't know anything. The man studied me, his eyes moving from my face to my belly to my soaked clothes and slippers. Something like sympathy flickered across his features, there and gone. That's unfortunate, he said, because if we can't find him, we have to send a message. And you're the message. The second man appeared at the mouth of the alley, blocking my only exit. He was bigger, broader, with a face that looked like it had been broken and badly reset more than once. I was trapped. The pressure in my abdomen spiked into real pain, a cramp that seized my entire lower body and made me double over. I gasped, one hand still on my belly, the other reaching for the fence to keep myself upright. She's in labor, the bigger man said. She's not in labor. She's scared. The first man took a step toward me. Listen, Vesper. This doesn't have to be difficult. Come with us. Answer some questions. If you really don't know where Wade is, we'll let you go. I didn't believe him. I could see it in his eyes, in the way his hand hovered near his gun. They weren't going to let me go. Wade had made me a liability, and liabilities didn't walk away. Another cramp hit, stronger this time, radiating from my belly to my back. I cried out, couldn't help it, and slid down the fence until I was on my knees in a puddle. Christ, the first man muttered. He looked at his partner. Call it in. Tell them we have a situation. The bigger man pulled out a phone, turning slightly away, and that's when I heard it. A car engine. Close. Getting closer. Headlights flooded the alley, bright and blinding. I heard a door open, then another. Footsteps, multiple sets, moving with military precision. Gentlemen. The voice that cut through the rain was low, controlled, and somehow more terrifying than the gun at the first man's hip. You're in the wrong neighborhood. I squinted against the headlights, trying to see who was speaking. All I could make out were silhouettes. 3 of them. No, 4. Men in dark coats, standing between me and my would-be captors. The first man's hand moved to his gun. This isn't your business, Adriano. You're in my territory. That makes it my business. The voice, Adriano, didn't rise, didn't need to. It carried the weight of absolute authority. And the woman is under my protection now. Since when? Since I said so. There was a long silence, filled only by the sound of rain and my own ragged breathing. I was still on my knees, still cramping, trying to process what was happening. The first man looked at me, then back at the silhouettes. His hand moved away from his gun. You're making a mistake. I rarely do. The 2 men retreated, backing slowly out of the alley, and then they were gone. Running. The sound of a car engine, tires squealing. The headlights cut out, and I was left in darkness with 4 strangers. One of them moved toward me, and I tried to scramble backward, but there was nowhere to go. The fence was at my back. The cramps were still coming, waves of pain that made it hard to think. Don't touch me, I managed to say. He stopped. I still couldn't see his face, just his outline. Tall, broad-shouldered. He crouched down slowly, putting himself at my level. I'm not going to hurt you. His voice was the same one that had spoken before. Adriano, low and steady. But you need medical attention. I'm fine. You're on your knees in an alley in the rain. You're not fine. Another cramp hit, and I bit down on my lip hard enough to taste blood. He saw. Of course he saw. How far along? He asked. 7 months. Contractions? I don't know. Maybe. My voice broke. I was so cold, so tired. Please, I just need to go. I need to find somewhere. You're coming with me. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even really a command. It was simply a statement of fact, delivered in a tone that suggested arguing would be pointless. I shook my head, even though I had no idea what I was refusing. I don't know you. My name is Kael Adriano. I own this city. And right now, you have two choices. He stood, extending a hand toward me. You can come with me, or you can stay here and wait for those men to come back. Because they will come back, Vesper. And next time, I might not be here to stop them. The fact that he knew my name should have terrified me. Maybe it did. But I was too exhausted to feel anything except the cold and the pain and the overwhelming certainty that I couldn't survive another hour on my own. I looked at his outstretched hand. I couldn't see his face, but I could see his hand. Large, steady, not reaching for me, just waiting. The baby kicked, a small flutter against my palm. I took his hand. His grip was firm but careful, and he pulled me to my feet with an ease that suggested my weight was nothing to him. The moment I was standing, another wave of dizziness hit. I swayed, and his other hand came to my elbow, steadying me. Can you walk? He asked. I think so. Good. The car's this way. He guided me toward one of the silhouettes. A black car, sleek and expensive looking, idling in the mouth of the alley. One of the other men opened the back door, and Kyle helped me inside with the same careful efficiency he'd used to pull me to my feet. The interior was warm, leather seats, soft lighting. I sank into it and immediately started shivering, the warmth making the cold even more apparent. Kyle slid in beside me and said something in a language I didn't recognize to the driver. The car started moving. I pressed myself against the opposite door, as far from him as I could get in the confined space, and tried to see his face. The passing streetlights illuminated him in flashes. Dark hair, longer on top, shorter on the sides. Sharp jaw. Eyes that were either blue or gray, I couldn't tell. Handsome in a way that seemed almost cruel, like someone had carved his features with precision and no mercy. He was watching me with the same intensity I was watching him. Where are we going? I asked, and was ashamed by how small my voice sounded. Somewhere safe. Where? My home. My home. Not a safe house or a hotel. His home. I don't want to go to your home. I wanted what? To go back to the apartment? Wade had made it clear I wasn't welcome there. To go to a shelter? I was having contractions. I want to go to a hospital. We're going to my home first. I have a doctor there. I don't need. You're having contractions. You're hypothermic, and you've been running through the rain in slippers. You need a doctor. He said it the same way he'd said everything else. Calm, factual, allowing no room for argument. When you're stable, we'll discuss your options. The cramps were getting worse. I could feel it, the tightening across my belly, the pressure building. I pressed my hand to my stomach and tried to breathe through it. Kyle leaned forward and said something to the driver. The car accelerated. How do you know my name? I asked when I could speak again. I make it my business to know things. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting right now. He reached for something in the seat pocket, pulled out a blanket, and handed it to me. You're shaking. I took the blanket because I was shaking, violently, and wrapped it around myself. It was soft, expensive, and smelled faintly of cedar. Nothing like the cheap fleece blankets Wade and I had. Wade and I. Past tense. The thought made my throat tight. The men in the alley, I said. They were looking for Wade. I couldn't say boyfriend. Couldn't say partner. They said he owed money. He does. Quite a lot, actually. How do you know that? Kale's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe. I know everything that happens in this city. Every debt, every deal, every mistake. His gaze dropped to my belly. Every liability. The word hung in the air between us. I'm not a liability, I said. I didn't know. I didn't know he owed anyone. I didn't know about any of it. I believe you. Then why? Because Wade made you a target when he ran, and targets don't last long in my city. The car turned onto a wide street lined with trees, and I realized we were leaving the neighborhood I knew. The buildings here were different, older, grander, brownstones with ornate facades, streetlights that actually worked, trees that hadn't been strangled by pollution. I don't understand, I said. Why are you helping me? Kael was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I don't like seeing pregnant women hunted in my streets. It's bad for business. Bad for business. Not because it was wrong, not because I needed help, because it was bad for business. I should have been insulted. Instead, I felt something like relief. At least he was honest. At least I knew where I stood. The car pulled through a gate, wrought iron, tall, topped with spikes, and up a long driveway. The house at the end wasn't a house. It was a mansion. 3 stories of stone and glass, lit from within, surrounded by manicured gardens that probably looked beautiful in daylight. This is where you live? I asked stupidly. Yes. The car stopped in front of a set of double doors, and immediately one of them opened. A woman appeared, middle-aged, wearing a crisp white coat. A doctor, I realized. Kael got out first and came around to my side, opening the door and offering his hand again. I took it because getting out of the car on my own would have been impossible. My legs were shaking too badly. The doctor was already speaking, rapid-fire questions about my symptoms, my due date, my medical history. I tried to answer, but the words kept getting tangled in my brain. Everything was happening too fast. Kael said something to her in that other language. Russian, maybe? And she nodded. Come inside, dear, she said to me, her accent thick, but her English clear. We'll get you warm, and take a look at the baby. I let her guide me up the steps and through the doors into a foyer that was bigger than the entire apartment I'd shared with Wade. Marble floors, a chandelier that looked like it cost more than a car, paintings on the walls that might have been originals, and Kael behind me, a silent, imposing presence. The doctor led me through a maze of hallways to a room that had been set up as some kind of medical suite, an examination table, monitors, equipment I didn't recognize. Lie down, she instructed, and I did, too exhausted to do anything else. She worked quickly, efficiently, checking my vitals, listening to the baby's heartbeat, pressing gently on my abdomen. Kale stood near the door, watching. The baby's fine, the doctor said. Finally. Strong heartbeat, good movement. The contractions are Braxton Hicks, not labor, brought on by stress and dehydration. She looked at Kael. She needs rest, fluids, and to stay warm. Set her up in the east wing, he said. The doctor nodded and turned back to me. I'm Dr. Ivanova. I'll be checking on you regularly. For now, I'm going to start an IV to get some fluids in you, and then you need to sleep. I can't stay here, I said weakly. I need to find somewhere. You're staying here, Kael said, and his tone left no room for argument. At least until the baby is safe. But I can't. We'll discuss the terms tomorrow. Tonight, you sleep. Dr. Ivanova inserted the IV with practiced ease, and I watched the clear fluid begin to drip into my arm. Within minutes, I could feel the exhaustion pulling at me, dragging me down. The last thing I saw before I closed my eyes was Kael, still standing by the door, still watching me with that unreadable expression. And the last thought I had before sleep took me was that I'd just traded one prison for another. I just hoped this one wouldn't kill me. I woke to sunlight and silence. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. The bed beneath me was too soft, the sheets too fine. The ceiling above me was too high, painted with some kind of mural, clouds and angels and gold leaf that caught the morning light. Then it all came rushing back. Wade, the alley, the men, Kael Adriano. I sat up too quickly, and my head spun. The IV was gone, but there was a small bandage on my arm where it had been. I was wearing different clothes, a nightgown, soft cotton, Nothing like anything I owned. Someone had dressed me while I slept. The thought made my skin crawl. I looked around the room. It was huge, easily 3 times the size of the bedroom I'd shared with Wade. A 4-poster bed with heavy curtains. A sitting area with a couch and chairs. Bookshelves lined one wall. French doors led to what looked like a balcony. I was a prisoner in a palace. I threw back the covers and stood, testing my legs. They held. The cramps from last night were gone, replaced by a dull ache that was almost worse because it reminded me of everything that had happened. I was homeless, penniless, and now I was in the home of a man I didn't know, a man who'd said he owned this city. I needed to leave. I made it to the door before I realized I had no idea where to go. The hallway outside was empty, lined with more paintings and antique furniture. I could hear voices somewhere below, distant and muffled. I wrapped my arms around my belly and tried to think. If I could find a phone, I could call. Who? I still had no one. But maybe a women's shelter. Maybe the police. The police. Would they even help me? Wade owed money to dangerous people. Those men in the alley had guns. And Kyle Adriano, if he really owned this city the way he claimed, the police probably weren't an option. I was on my own. Again. I started walking, choosing directions at random, trying to find stairs or an exit or anything that would help me orient myself in this labyrinth of wealth and power. Every room I passed was more opulent than the last. A library, a formal dining room with a table that could seat 20, a conservatory filled with plants. Finally, I found a staircase. Marble, sweeping, leading down to the foyer I barely remembered from last night. I was halfway down when I heard his voice. I wouldn't recommend leaving. I froze, my hand on the banister, and looked down. Kyle was standing at the bottom of the stairs, dressed in a dark suit, his hands in his pockets. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread. Powerful, controlled, dangerous. I'm not asking for your recommendation, I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded. The men who were hunting you last night? They're still looking. If you walk out of here, you'll be dead before nightfall. That's not your problem. It is if it happens in my territory. He moved to the base of the stairs, looking up at me. Come down, Vesper. We need to talk. I didn't want to go down. Every instinct told me to run the other way, to find another exit, to get as far from this man as possible. But he was right about one thing. I had nowhere to go. Slowly, I descended the stairs. He watched me the entire time, those gray-blue eyes tracking my every movement. When I reached the bottom, he gestured toward a doorway. This way. He led me to a room I hadn't seen yet. An office, clearly his. Dark wood paneling, a massive desk, walls lined with books, and what looked like security monitors showing different parts of the house and grounds. He closed the door behind us and moved to the desk, leaning against it rather than sitting. Casual, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. He was ready to move if he needed to. Sit, he said, gesturing to a chair. I'll stand. His mouth twitched. Not quite. A smile. Stubborn. Cautious. Good. You should be cautious. Especially now. He pulled a folder from his desk and opened it. Wade Callahan, age 32, 2 years at Northwestern, dropped out. A string of failed business ventures. A gambling problem he's had since he was 25. He looked up at me. And he owes 3 different organizations a combined total of $400,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. That's not possible. We didn't have that kind of money. We could barely afford rent. He didn't lose it on rent. He lost it on games. Poker, mostly. Some sports betting. And when he ran out of money, he borrowed. From people who don't take kindly to being stiffed. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what you're dealing with. Wade didn't just run. He ran and left you to face the consequences. Those men last night? They were the civilized ones. The next people who come looking won't ask questions first. Sank into the chair, my legs giving out. $400,000. My hand went to my belly, where the baby was moving, oblivious. What am I supposed to do? You're supposed to stay here until this is resolved. Resolved how? That depends on whether Wade is smart enough to surface and pay his debts, or stupid enough to keep running. Kyle closed the folder. Either way, you're not going anywhere until it's safe. I can't stay here. I can't. You don't even know me. Why would you? I told you. Bad for business. That's bullshit. The word surprised both of us. I could see it in the slight widening of his eyes. You don't help people because it's bad for business. You help people when it benefits you. So what do you get out of this? What do you want from me? For a long moment he just looked at me. Then he said, I want you to stay alive. And I want your child to be born safe. That's all. Why? Because I don't hurt women or children. Ever. It's a line I don't cross. He straightened, moving around the desk to a cabinet against the wall. He opened it, revealing a bar. And because Wade Callahan is a means to an end, the people he owes money to are my competitors. If I can leverage his debt, I can leverage them. There it was, the truth underneath the altruism. So I'm bait, I said. You're protected. He poured amber liquid into a glass. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting. He took a sip, watching me over the rim of his glass. You're right to be angry, but anger won't change your situation. You have no money, no resources, and no one to turn to. I'm offering you safety, a place to stay, medical care, everything you need until your child is born. And then what? And then we reevaluate. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. He set down his glass. I'm not your enemy, Vesper. But I'm not your savior either. I'm a pragmatist. And pragmatically, it benefits both of us if you stay here. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him to go to hell, to walk out of this mansion and figure things out on my own. But I couldn't. Because he was right. I had nothing. What are the rules? I asked finally. Rules? You said I was staying here. That means there are rules, expectations, things I can and can't do. I met his eyes. I need to know what I'm agreeing to. Something like approval flickered across his face. You can move freely through the house. There are areas that are off limits. My private office, the security room, the armory. Those doors will be locked. You don't go anywhere outside the grounds without an escort. Dr. Ivanova will check on you daily. If you need anything, tell the staff. And you? What about me? What do you expect from me? I expect you to stay alive and healthy. That's all. He picked up his glass again. I'm not Wade, Vesper. I don't need you to be grateful or compliant or anything other than what you are. I'm offering you a business arrangement. Safety in exchange for your cooperation. Cooperation with what? If Wade contacts you, you tell me. If anyone contacts you, you tell me. You don't leave the grounds, you don't try to run, and you don't do anything that puts yourself or your child at risk. He finished his drink. Can you do that? I thought about it, really thought about it. About the alternative, the streets, the shelters, the men who were hunting me. About the baby growing inside me, who didn't deserve any of this. Yes, I said. I can do that. Good. He moved toward the door. Maria will show you to the dining room. You need to eat. Wait. He paused, his hand on the doorknob. Why me? You said you don't hurt women or children, but there must be hundreds of women in this city in bad situations. Why help me specifically? He was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he said, because you were in my path. And because when I looked at you last night, I saw someone fighting to survive. His eyes met mine. I respect that. He left before I could respond. I sat there in his office, surrounded by books and screens and the lingering scent of expensive scotch, and tried to figure out if I'd just been saved or captured. Maybe both. Maybe there wasn't a difference anymore. The days blurred together. I woke each morning in that too-soft bed, in that room with the painted ceiling, and for a moment I'd forget where I was. Then reality would crash back, and I'd spend the first hour of each day trying to decide if I was a guest or a prisoner. The truth, I was learning, was somewhere in between. Maria, the housekeeper, was kind. She brought me meals, showed me where things were, never asked questions. Dr. Ivanova came by every afternoon to check on me and the baby. Both heartbeats strong, she'd say with a smile. You're doing well. I didn't feel like I was doing well. I felt like I was existing in a state of suspended animation, waiting for something to happen. Kyle, I barely saw. He was there, a presence I could feel even when I couldn't see him. I'd catch glimpses, crossing the foyer, in his office with the door open, standing in the garden at dusk, talking on his phone, in that language I'd learned was Russian. He was always working, always moving, and he never seemed to sleep. When we did interact, it was brief, polite. He'd ask how I was feeling. I'd say fine. He'd nod and leave. It was like living with a ghost. The house, at least, was beautiful. I spent hours exploring it, discovering new rooms, new corners. A music room with a grand piano, a gym that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel, a library with floor-to-ceiling windows that let in the afternoon sun. That's where I spent most of my time. Reading, trying not to think about Wade, about what came next, about the fact that I was living in luxury while having no idea what the future held. It was in the library, a week after I'd arrived, that Kyle found me. I was curled up in one of the oversized chairs, a book on my lap that I wasn't really reading, when I heard footsteps. I looked up to find him in the doorway, still in his suit, though he'd loosened his tie. You like this room, he observed. It's quiet. It was my mother's favorite. He moved into the room, his hands in his pockets. She used to say books were windows to lives we'd never live. It was the most personal thing he'd said to me since I arrived. Was? I asked carefully. She died when I was 16. I'm sorry. He shrugged, a small gesture that somehow conveyed both acceptance and dismissal. It was a long time ago. He moved to the window, looking out at the darkening garden. Dr. Ivanova says you're not eating enough. I'm eating. Not enough. I'm not hungry. The baby needs. I know what the baby needs. I closed the book, more forcefully than necessary. I know I need to eat and rest and stay healthy. I'm trying. But it's hard to have an appetite when you're living in a stranger's house, waiting for the other shoe to drop. He turned to look at me, and I saw something in his expression I hadn't seen before. Concern, maybe, or understanding. What are you afraid is going to happen? He asked. I don't know. That's the problem. I stood up, restless suddenly. You say I'm safe here, but I don't feel safe. I feel suspended, like I'm waiting for you to tell me what you really want, because nobody helps someone out of the goodness of their heart, not in this world. You're right, he said. Nobody does. But I told you what I want. Leverage against Wade's creditors. And in the meantime, you stay alive. And when you have your leverage, then what happens to me? Then you make a choice. You stay here or you leave. But you leave with resources, money, a place to live, whatever you need to start over. Why would you do that? He was quiet for a moment, his gaze steady on mine. Because you remind me of someone. Who? My mother. He said it simply, without emotion. She was in a situation like yours once, pregnant, alone, dependent on a man who saw her as a liability. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Nobody helped her, and by the time I was old enough to change that, it was too late. The admission hung in the air between us, raw and unexpected. I'm sorry, I said again, softer this time. Don't be sorry, just eat. He moved toward the door, then paused. There's a terrace off your room. Fresh air might help with the appetite. I didn't know there was a terrace. The doors were locked. They're not anymore. He left, and I was alone again with the books and the silence. That night, I opened the French doors in my room and stepped out onto the terrace I hadn't known existed. It overlooked the garden, now dark except for small lights along the pathways. The air was cold but clean, and I breathed it in deeply. For the first time since I'd arrived, I felt something other than fear or uncertainty. I felt possibility. The dream always started the same way. I was in the alley again, rain pouring down, the two men closing in. But this time, when I tried to run, my legs wouldn't move. I was frozen, and they were getting closer, and I could see the gun, and I woke gasping, my hand on my belly, the baby kicking in response to my racing heart. The room was dark except for a sliver of moonlight through the curtains. I was safe. In the mansion. Not in the alley. But my heart wouldn't slow down. I got out of bed, intending to go to the terrace for air, when I heard voices. Low, angry, coming from somewhere below. One of them was Kyle. I should have gone back to bed. Should have minded my own business. But curiosity, or maybe just the need to know what was happening in the house where I was living, drew me to the door. I opened it slowly, carefully, and stepped into the hallway. The voices were clearer now, coming from the direction of Kyle's office. Foolish to keep her here. A man's voice, accented like Dr. Ivanova. She's a complication. She's under my protection. Kyle's voice, calm, but with an edge to it that made me shiver. Protection or obsession? A different voice now, younger. You're changing your routines, staying home more, making yourself predictable. I'm making myself careful. You're making yourself vulnerable, the first man said, because of a woman you don't even know. I know enough. You know she's Wade Callahan's pregnant girlfriend. You know she's a weakness your enemies can exploit. What you don't know is if she's worth the risk. There was a long silence. Then Kyle said very quietly, "Get out." Kyle, I said get out. Both of you. I heard footsteps, and I barely had time to retreat back into my room before two men emerged from the office below. They didn't see me, but I saw them, hard-faced, dangerous-looking, the kind of men who worked for someone, like Kyle. When their footsteps faded, I should have closed my door and gone back to bed. Instead, I found myself walking down the stairs. Kyle was still in his office, standing at the window with his back to the door. I knocked softly on the doorframe, and he turned. If he was surprised to see me, he didn't show it. "You should be asleep," he said. "I had a bad dream." "The alley?" I nodded. Of course he'd guess. He seemed to know everything. "Come in," he said. I hesitated, then stepped into the office. He gestured to the chair I'd sat in before, and I sank into it, suddenly aware that I was wearing nothing but the nightgown Maria had left for me. Kyle poured 2 glasses of water from a pitcher on his desk and handed me one. His fingers brushed mine briefly, and I was startled by the warmth of them. "I heard voices," I admitted. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but you did anyway." He took a seat on the edge of his desk, the same position as before. "What did you hear?" "Enough to know your men think I'm a problem." "My men think a lot of things. Most of them are wrong." "Are they wrong about this?" He considered me for a long moment. "You are a complication," he said finally. "But not a problem. There's a difference." "What difference?" "A problem is something that needs to be eliminated. A complication is just something that needs to be managed." He set down his glass. "I'm very good at managing complications." "They said you're making yourself vulnerable. They're concerned. It's their job to be concerned." "Are you? Vulnerable?" His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Everyone's vulnerable to something, Vesper. The trick is knowing what it is and protecting it accordingly." "And what are you vulnerable to?" "You're getting philosophical at 2 in the morning." "You're avoiding the question." "Yes," he said. "I am." We sat there in comfortable silence, and I found myself studying him. The sharp angles of his face, the way his suit fit perfectly even though he'd been wearing it all day, the intelligence in his eyes, the calculation. Why did you really help me? I asked. And don't say it was bad for business, or because I remind you of your mother. Tell me the real reason. He was quiet for so long, I thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he said, because when I saw you in that alley, on your knees, protecting your child with your body, even though you were terrified, I saw something I don't see often in my world. What? Courage. Real courage. Not the kind that comes from having power or weapons or backup. The kind that comes from having nothing and fighting anyway. His eyes met mine. I wanted to see what you'd do with a chance to survive. The admission took my breath away. And? I whispered. What am I doing? You're surviving, fighting even, asking questions, refusing to be complicit in your own captivity. He stood, moving to the window again. You're stronger than you know. I wanted to believe him, but all I felt was tired and scared and completely out of my depth. I don't feel strong, I said. Strong people rarely do. They just keep moving forward because there's no other choice. Is that what you do? Every day. I set down my water glass and stood, suddenly needing to move. Those men were right, you know. I am making you vulnerable. Wade, I swallowed hard. Wade could use me against you. Or his creditors could. I'm a liability. Let me worry about that. But, Vesper. He turned to face me. I've been doing this a very long time. I know how to protect what's mine. What's mine? The words sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with cold. I should go, I said quickly. Let you work or sleep or whatever it is you do at 2 in the morning. I think, he said quietly. I stand here and think about problems and solutions and all the moving pieces I have to track to keep my world from collapsing. Sounds exhausting. It is. I moved toward the door, then stopped. Kael? Yes? Thank you. For everything. I know I haven't said it, but I'm grateful. Even if I don't understand why you're doing this. You don't need to understand. You just need to trust that while you're here, you're safe. I nodded and left before he could see the tears that were suddenly threatening. Because the problem was, I was starting to trust him. And that terrified me more than anything else. 2 weeks became 3. 3 became 4. The baby grew. So did I, my belly expanding until I could barely see my feet. Dr. Ivanova assured me everything was progressing normally. The baby was healthy. I was healthy. But I was also restless. Living in the mansion was like living in a gilded cage. Beautiful, but confining. I had everything I could need: food, comfort, safety. But I couldn't leave. Couldn't make my own choices. Couldn't even go for a walk without an escort. It was Kael's world, and I was just living in it. He'd been gone for 3 days. Business, Maria had said when I asked. He hadn't told me himself, had just disappeared one morning. And the house felt different without him. Empty, even though it was full of staff and security. I missed him. The realization hit me while I was in the library, pretending to read. I missed his presence. The way he'd sometimes sit with me in the evenings, not talking, just existing in the same space. The way he'd ask about the baby, about my day, like he actually cared. Maybe he did care. I didn't know anymore. What I did know was that the lines between captor and protector, between arrangement and something else, were getting blurry. And that was dangerous. I was pulling a book from one of the higher shelves, a mistake with my balance as off as it was, when I heard the commotion. Voices, shouting, the sound of a door slamming. I froze, one hand on the bookshelf, the other on my belly. Then I heard his voice. Kael's, angry in a way I'd never heard before. I moved to the library door and peered out. From here I could see into the foyer. Kael was there, his suit disheveled, his tie gone, arguing with one of his men in rapid Russian, and there was blood on his shirt. My heart stopped. He was hurt. Kyle was hurt, and no one seemed to be helping him. They were just arguing, and I was moving before I thought it through, hurrying down the hallway and down the stairs as fast as my pregnant body would let me. Kyle! Everyone stopped, turned. Kyle's eyes found mine, and I saw surprise flash across his face. Go back upstairs, Vesper. You're bleeding. I'm fine. Go back. You're bleeding. I reached him, my hands automatically going to his chest, trying to find the source of the blood. Where is it? Where are you hurt? His hands caught mine, stopping me. It's not my blood. I looked up at him. What? It's not my blood, he repeated more gently. I'm not hurt. The relief was so intense it made my knees weak. He must have seen it because his grip on my hands tightened. Everyone out, he said quietly, still looking at me. Now. The room emptied. Footsteps, doors closing, until it was just us in the vast foyer. Whose blood is it? I asked. Someone who made a mistake. What kind of mistake? The kind that doesn't get repeated. He released my hands and stepped back. You shouldn't have come down here. You were hurt. I said I was fine. I thought, my voice cracked. I heard shouting, and then I saw the blood and I thought, I know what you thought. His voice was soft now, barely above a whisper. But I told you, Vesper. While you're here, you're safe. That includes me. I'm not going anywhere. You can't promise that. I just did. I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this world he lived in, this dangerous, violent world, wouldn't eventually swallow him whole. But I'd seen the blood. I'd heard the anger in his voice, knew what he was capable of. What happened? I asked. Nothing you need to worry about. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. He started to move past me, toward the stairs. Go back to your room. I need to clean up. I caught his arm. The fabric of his shirt was stiff with dried blood where I touched it, and I felt him tense. Talk to me, I said. Please. I'm living in your house, eating your food, under your protection. I deserve to know what's happening. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he sighed, a sound so tired it made my chest ache. Come with me, he said. He led me to his private quarters, a part of the house I'd never seen before. His bedroom was surprisingly simple. No opulence, no excess. Just a large bed, clean lines, and windows that overlooked the city. He went into the bathroom, and I heard water running. When he came back out, he'd taken off the bloody shirt and was wiping his hands and face with a towel. I tried not to stare. Failed. He was all lean muscle and old scars, the kind that told stories I probably didn't want to know. Wade surfaced, he said, tossing the towel aside. Or rather, someone found him. And before they could get him to talk, my people intervened. Is he alive? Barely. He's at a safe house being questioned. Questioned about what? About who else he owes, what he knows, whether he's been working with anyone. Kyle pulled a fresh shirt from his closet. And about you. My stomach dropped. Me? He claims he didn't know those men were looking for you, that he thought you'd go to a shelter or a friend. Kyle's jaw tightened as he buttoned the shirt. He didn't seem particularly concerned about what happened to you. I shouldn't have been surprised, but it still hurt. What are you going to do with him? That depends. On what? On whether he can be useful. If he can't. Kyle trailed off, but the implication was clear. You'd kill him. I'd let his creditors have him, which amounts to the same thing. He crossed to where I stood. Does that bother you? Should it? Most people would say yes. Most people haven't been abandoned while 7 months pregnant. I met his eyes. I don't love Wade. I'm not sure I ever did. I thought I did, but love doesn't leave you on your knees in an alley. No, Kyle said quietly. It doesn't. We stood there, close enough that I could feel the heat coming off him, see the small scar on his collarbone, count the steady rhythm of his breathing. "Why did you come downstairs?" he asked. "I told you. I thought you were hurt. Why did that matter to you?" The question hung between us, heavy with implications I wasn't ready to examine. "Because," I said finally, "because you've been kind to me, protected me, given me a chance when I had nothing. Because—" I stopped, the words catching in my throat. "Because what, Vesper?" "Because when you're gone, the house feels empty. And when I heard you might be hurt, I couldn't breathe. The admission cost me, but I couldn't take it back. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's just gratitude or Stockholm syndrome or something else. But I needed to know you were okay." His hand came up slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his fingers brushed my cheek, and I realized I was crying again. "It's not Stockholm syndrome," he said. "How do you know?" "Because you still fight me, still question, still refuse to be compliant." His thumb wiped away a tear. "Stockholm syndrome victims don't look at their captors the way you're looking at me right now." "How am I looking at you?" "Like you're trying to figure out if I'm salvation or damnation." "What if you're both?" "Then you're smarter than I gave you credit for." His hand dropped. "Go back to your room, Vesper. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll talk about Wade and what comes next." I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay in this moment, in this strange intimacy we'd somehow created. But I went anyway, because he was right. I needed to figure out what he was to me. And I couldn't do that while standing in his bedroom, feeling the ghost of his touch on my skin. Wade came to the mansion 2 days later. I heard the shouting before I saw him. Angry voices, his louder than the rest, demanding to see me. I was in the garden, attempting to walk the paths for exercise like Dr. Ivanova had recommended, when Kyle appeared. His face was composed, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "Wade's here," he said. My hand went to my belly instinctively. "Why?" "He says he wants to see you, wants to explain." "I don't want to see him." "I know, but I think you should." I stared at him. "Why?" "Because you need closure. Because he owes you an explanation. And because—" He paused. "Because I think you need to see him for what he is, not who you thought he was." He was right. I hated that he was right. "Will you stay with me?" I asked. "If you want me to." "I do." We walked back to the house together, and Kyle led me to a sitting room I hadn't been in before. Smaller, more intimate. And Wade was there, pacing, flanked by two of Kyle's men. He looked terrible, thinner than I remembered. Pale. There was a bruise on his jaw that was turning yellow at the edges. When he saw me, his whole face changed. Relief. Guilt. Something that might have been love if I didn't know better. "Vesper," he said, starting toward me. Kyle's hand on my shoulder stopped him more effectively than any words. "Don't," Kale said quietly. Wade's eyes went to Kale, then back to me. "What the hell is this? Why are you with him?" "Because you threw me out," I said, and was proud of how steady my voice was. "Because you left me with nothing. Because men with guns came looking for you, and I was the one they found." "I didn't know. You didn't care." I moved further into the room, Kyle a silent presence behind me. "You didn't care what happened to me or the baby. You just wanted to run." "I was scared." Wade's voice rose. "I owed money to dangerous people. I was trying to figure out how to fix it." "By abandoning your pregnant girlfriend?" "I was going to come back. I was going to—" "You're lying." Kale's voice cut through the room like a blade. "You were leaving the country. We found the plane tickets in your apartment." Wade's face went white. "One ticket," I said softly. "You were leaving. Without me." "Vesper, were you ever going to tell me about the money? About the debt?" He didn't answer. Couldn't, probably. "Why did you even stay with me?" I asked. If you were planning to leave, why keep me around? Because I loved you. No, I shook my head. You loved that I didn't ask questions, that I believed your lies, that I was convenient. I felt the baby kick, hard, and something in my chest hardened. I was just another thing you used and discarded when you were done. That's not. It is. And you know what the worst part is? I almost believed you cared. I almost convinced myself that what we had was real. I moved closer to him, close enough to see the fear in his eyes. But you don't care about anyone but yourself. You never did. Vesper, please. We can start over. I can fix this. I can. You can leave, Kyle said. You've said what you came to say. Now go. She's my. She's nothing to you. Not anymore. Kyle's voice dropped to something dangerous. You made that clear when you left her on her knees in the rain. When you let men hunt her while you ran. When you bought yourself a plane ticket and left her to die. I wasn't. I didn't mean. You meant exactly what you did. Now leave before I change my mind about letting you walk out of here. Wade looked at me one last time. Vesper. Goodbye, Wade. The finality in my voice must have convinced him. He left, escorted by Kyle's men, and I was alone with Kyle in the sitting room. I waited for the tears, for the heartbreak, for something, but all I felt was relief. Are you all right? Kyle asked. I think so. I sank into a chair. Is it wrong that I feel nothing? It's human. He sat across from me. He was a coward. You're well rid of him. What happens to him now? He's being relocated. New city, new identity. In exchange, he gives us information about his creditor's operations. Kyle's eyes met mine. He won't bother you again. And his debt? Forgiven. In exchange for his testimony. I should have felt something about that too. Gratitude, maybe, that Kyle was saving Wade's life. But I just felt tired. Thank you, I said, for making me see him. You were right. I needed closure. What will you do now? What do you mean? Wade's out of the picture. The debt is handled. The threat is neutralized. He leaned back, studying me. You're free to leave if you want. I'll set you up with money, a place to live, whatever you need. The offer should have filled me with joy, freedom, independence, the chance to start over. Instead, it felt like a door closing. What if I don't want to leave? I asked quietly. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Why would you stay? Because, I trailed off, trying to find the words. Because I feel safe here. Because Dr. Ivanova knows my medical history. Because the baby's room upstairs has everything we need. Those are practical reasons. What other reasons should there be? I think you know. I did know. I just wasn't ready to say it. I'm not ready to leave, I said finally. Not yet, if that's okay. It's more than okay. He stood, and I saw relief in his posture. Stay as long as you need. As he walked to the door, I said, Kyle? Yes? Thank you. For everything. He looked back at me, and for just a moment, his carefully controlled mask slipped. I saw something raw and real underneath. You're welcome, Vesper. And then, he was gone, and I was alone with my thoughts, and the growing certainty that I wasn't staying for practical reasons at all. I was staying for him. The baby came 3 weeks early. I woke at dawn with contractions that felt different from the Braxton Hicks I'd been having for weeks. Stronger, more regular, impossible to ignore. I made it to the bathroom before my water broke, and then I was on the floor, gripping the edge of the sink, trying to remember how to breathe. I don't know how long I was there before Maria found me. Minutes, maybe. Hours. Time had stopped meaning anything. She called for Dr. Ivanova, for Kyle, for everyone, and suddenly the room was full of people and movement and calm, professional voices telling me everything would be okay. Dr. Ivanova examined me quickly. 8 centimeters, she said. The baby's coming fast. They moved me to the medical suite, the one I'd first been examined in, and I realized dimly that Kyle had prepared for this, had everything ready, had planned for the moment my child would be born under his roof. The thought should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like care. Where is he? I asked between contractions. Where's Kyle? I'm here. His voice came from the doorway, and then he was beside me, his hand finding mine. I'm right here. You shouldn't. This isn't. I'm not leaving. His grip was firm. Unless you want me to. Stay. The word came out as a gasp. Please stay. He stayed. Through hours of labor that blurred together. Through the pain and the fear and the exhaustion. Through every moment he was there, his hand in mine, his voice steady. You're doing so well, he'd say. So strong. Almost there. And finally, after what felt like forever and no time at all, I heard it. A cry. High and angry and perfect. It's a girl, Dr. Ivanova said, and then she was placing a tiny, squirming bundle in my arms. A beautiful, healthy girl. I looked down at my daughter, and felt something in my chest crack open. She was perfect, red-faced and screaming, with dark hair and tiny fists that waved in the air. Hi, I whispered. Hi, baby girl. I'm your mama. She stopped crying, like she recognized my voice. Her eyes, blue maybe, or gray, tried to focus on my face. I felt Kyle's hand on my shoulder, and looked up to find him staring at my daughter with an expression I'd never seen before. Wonder. Tenderness. Something that looked almost like fear. Do you want to hold her? I asked. He hesitated, then nodded. Dr. Ivanova showed him how to support her head, how to cradle her, and then my daughter was in his arms. She looked impossibly small against his chest. Fragile. But she didn't cry. She just looked up at him with those unfocused eyes, and I watched something in Kyle's face shift. What's her name? He asked quietly. I hadn't decided, hadn't wanted to choose until I met her. But looking at her now, in his arms, the name came to me, fully formed. Elara, I said. Her name is Elara. Elara, he said it like a prayer. It means light. Does it? In Greek. He looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that made my breath catch. It's perfect. The first few weeks with Elara were a blur of sleepless nights and learning curves and moments of pure terror when she cried and I didn't know why. But Kyle was there. Not hovering, not intrusive, just there. He'd appear in the nursery at 2 in the morning when Elara was screaming and I was crying from exhaustion, and he'd take her without a word, walk her until she calmed, then hand her back when she was ready to nurse. He had a crib moved into my room, had the best baby monitor money could buy installed, made sure Dr. Ivanova checked on us daily, and slowly, I watched him fall in love with my daughter. He'd hold her while I showered, rock her when she was fussy, talk to her in Russian, his voice soft and gentle in a way I'd never heard before. What? Are you telling her? I asked one evening, finding him in the nursery with Elara asleep on his chest. Old stories, he said quietly. The ones my mother told me. Like what? Firebird tales, Baba Yaga, heroes and magic and impossible quests. I sat in the chair next to him. She's too young to understand. She will someday. He looked down at Elara, his hand spanning her tiny back. And I want her to know these stories. Want her to know there's magic in the world, even if it's hidden. You're good with her. She's easy to be good with. You're good with both of us. His eyes met mine. You're both easy to be good with. The moment stretched, heavy with things unsaid. Kyle. Vesper. We both stopped, smiled awkwardly. You first, I said. I was just going to say that if you're still planning to leave, to find your own place, I can help you start looking, set up viewings, whatever you need. Is that what you want? For me to leave? I want whatever makes you happy. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He stood carefully, Alara still asleep against him, and transferred her to the crib. You're not obligated to stay, Vesper. You never were. This was supposed to be temporary. And if I don't want it to be temporary? He went very still. What are you saying? I'm saying, I stood, moving closer to him. I'm saying I don't want to leave. I'm saying I feel safe here. I'm saying when I think about the future, about raising Alara, I can't imagine doing it anywhere else. Because of the house? The resources? Because of you. The admission hung between us, raw and terrifying. You don't know what you're saying, he said finally. You've been through trauma. Your hormones are still adjusting from the pregnancy. You're grateful, and you're confusing gratitude with, stop. I put my hand on his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath my palm. Stop telling me what I'm feeling. I know my own mind. I know what I want. What do you want? This. Us. You. I looked up at him. I want to stay. Not as a guest or someone under protection. I want to build a life here. With you. Vesper. I love you. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. I don't know when it happened. Maybe in the alley that first night. Maybe when you sat with me in the library. Maybe when I saw you hold my daughter like she was made of glass. But I love you, Kael Adriano. And I need you to tell me if there's any chance you feel the same. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then his hand came up to cup my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. I've loved you since the moment you took my hand in that alley, he said quietly. When you were terrified and in pain, and still fought to survive. I've loved you every day since, watching you grow stronger, watching you become a mother, watching you build a life from nothing. Then why? Because I'm dangerous, Vesper. Because my world is violent and ugly, and full of things that could hurt you and Alara. Because loving me means accepting all of that. I know what your world is. I've seen it. I've lived in it for months. I moved closer until we were almost touching. And I'm still here. I'm still choosing you. You could have anyone. Someone safe. Someone normal. I don't want anyone else. I want you. Dangerous world and all. His other hand came to my waist, and I felt the tension in him, the careful control starting to crack. If I let myself have this, he said. If I let myself have you, I won't let you go. Ever. Do you understand that? Yes. I'll protect you and Alara with everything I have. I'll give you both the world. But I'll also be possessive and demanding, and probably impossible to live with. I think I can handle it. Vesper. Kael, stop talking and kiss me. He did. His mouth found mine, gentle at first, then deeper, and I felt months of tension and restraint and unspoken feelings pour into that kiss. His hands tightened on my waist, my fingers tangled in his hair. We kissed like we were starving for each other, like we'd been waiting forever for permission to feel this. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Move into my room, he said against my lips. Both of you. I want you where I can see you, where I can protect you. Okay. Marry me. I pulled back to look at him. What? Marry me. Not now, not tomorrow, but someday. When you're ready. When you trust that this is real. His eyes searched mine. I want to make you mine in every way that matters. I want Alara to have my name, my protection. I want a future with both of you. That's a terrible proposal. Then I'll do it again. Better. With a ring and flowers and whatever you want. I don't need any of that. I kissed him again, softer this time. I just need you to mean it. I mean it. With everything I am. Then yes, someday, when we're ready. He smiled. really smiled, and I realized I'd never seen him look happy before. Not like this. From the crib, Alara made a small sound. Not crying, just stirring. Kael moved to check on her, and I watched him with my daughter, this dangerous man who'd saved my life and stolen my heart, and thought about how strange life was. 6 months ago, I'd been on my knees in the rain with nothing. Now I had everything. A year later, we were married in the garden. It was small, intimate. Just Dr. Ivanova, Maria, a few of Kael's most trusted people, and Alara, who was walking now, toddling around in a white dress that matched mine, stealing everyone's heart. Kael wore a suit that probably cost more than my old apartment. I wore a simple dress that Maria had helped me choose. And when we said our vows, I meant every word. I promise to stand beside you, to trust you, to build a life with you and our daughter, to choose you every day, no matter what comes. I promise to protect you, to cherish you, to give you and Elara everything I have, to be worthy of the chance you gave me. He put a ring on my finger, white gold with a stone that caught the light like captured starlight. I put one on his, simple, elegant, understated. And when he kissed me, I heard Alara giggle and Maria cry, and I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the fear, the moment I thought my life was over, and how, from that ending, something beautiful had begun. Kael pulled back, his forehead resting against mine, and whispered, "Mine." "Yours," I agreed. "Always." Years passed. Elara grew into a smart, fierce little girl who had her mother's stubbornness and her father's intensity. She learned Russian and English, learned to move through Kael's world with the confidence of someone who knew she was protected, but not coddled. Kael's empire grew. So did our family. A son, 2 years after Alara. A daughter, 3 years after that. The mansion filled with laughter and chaos, and the beautiful mess of life. And through it all, Kael and I grew together. We learned each other's rhythms, each other's needs. We fought sometimes, fiercely, because we were both stubborn and strong-willed. But we always came back to each other, always chose each other. One night, when the children were asleep and we were alone in our room, I found him at the window, looking out at the city he controlled. I moved to stand beside him, and he pulled me against his chest, his arms wrapping around me. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked. "Taking me in that night? Everything that came after?" "Never." He kissed the top of my head. "You're the best decision I ever made." "I was an accident. A complication." "You were fate." He turned me to face him. "I was supposed to find you that night. Supposed to bring you here. Supposed to fall in love with you. All of it was meant to be." "You don't believe in fate." "I believe in you. In us. In the family we built from nothing." His hand cupped my face. "That's all the faith I need." I kissed him, slow and sweet, and felt the same flutter in my chest I'd felt that first night when he'd held Ilara. The same certainty that I was exactly where I belonged. "I love you," I said against his lips. "I love you." He pulled me closer. "My wife, my Vesper, mine." "Always," I whispered. "Always yours." And I meant it. Because love wasn't what I'd thought it was with Wade, weak and conditional and easily broken. Love was this, strong and fierce and built on trust and choice and the willingness to fight for each other every single day. Love was Kael holding me while I cried, protecting me when I was vulnerable, celebrating with me when I was strong. Love was building a life together from ruins, from nothing, from a moment of chance in a dark alley. Love was choosing each other, again and again, through every storm and every joy. And I would choose him, every time, for the rest of my life, because I'd learned, in the hardest way possible, that love wasn't about perfection. It was about finding someone who saw you at your worst and stayed. Someone who protected your heart while teaching you to protect your own. Someone who turned your ending into a beginning. And Kyle Adriano, the dangerous, powerful, impossibly complicated man who'd saved my life, had done all that and more. He'd given me hope when I had none, safety when I was hunted, a future when I thought I had nothing left. He'd given me everything, and in return, I'd given him my heart. It was enough. It was